Alright, so how did I figure out the math and all the lengths and angles of this segmented ring to fit that speaker perfectly? Here's how I did it. So first step, I scanned in the oval speaker using just one of those combo printer fax scanner things that you can get at Office Depot or Office Max or wherever. They're pretty inexpensive. And I just set the speaker on the scanner. And in this demonstration, it's a tiny little round speaker because I forgot to put record on the larger oval speaker. So just bear with me. Use your imagination that this is just an oval speaker. So once I scanned it in as an image, I saved it to my computer, and then I went into SketchUp. Alright, so now that I have my speaker scanned in as an image, I'm going to import that into SketchUp. Just navigate to where I saved it, and then when I import it in, I'm going to import it in as an image. So click import, and then I'm just going to drop it on the ground here, stretch it out to an arbitrary size. So I'm going to move it around to where it is facing forward on the camera. So I'm just going to rotate it up here to the blue axis, so that way when I change my camera settings to front, it is zoomed in on the front, and then I'm going to change the camera to parallel projection, and that'll be just a nice flat image to draw on. Alright, we'll zoom in here, and then I'm going to update my scene so that way I have a way to come right back to where I was working. Now when I scanned it in, I dropped a straight edge in on the scanner and butted it up against the side of the scanner, so that way I could have a straight reference place to place my speaker. So if I wanted to check this, I could hit T for tape measure, and then come over here and just drop a layout line right on the edge of that ruler, and make sure that that layout line is really close to the edge of the ruler on the bottom. Alright, and now I'm going to drop another layout line over here because we need to scale this image. So I'm going to grab my line tool, and I'm going to go from layout line to layout line, and I measured the speaker, and from the outside of the frame to the outside of the frame is 6.5 inches. So I'm going to grab my tape measure tool, and I'm going to click on this point and go over here and click on that point and type in 6.5, hit enter, and it asked me to resize the model. Yes, I want to resize the model. So now if we check that measurement is 6.5 inches, so it resized my picture to scale. So I'm going to delete these guys, and I'm going to box in some layout lines here. So I'm going to hit T for tape measure, and I'm going to go right up to this first rib of the speaker. All right, and then I'm going to go straight up to this other rib of the speaker. All right, and then we'll go from the side to the edge of that rib, and same thing on this side over here. Alright, so I'm going to hit R for rectangle. Draw in my rectangle from point to point, delete the surface. So now I'm going to T for tape measure to grab my guide tool, and I'm just going to snap to the center. Alright, so now I've found the center of my circle. So I'm going to delete this rectangle, C for circle. So now if we look at the picture of the amp, you'll see that I have 24 segments here. So in SketchUp, SketchUp doesn't actually draw a smooth circle. It's a bunch of small little lines that are smoothed over to make it look like a circle. So by default it's 24 segments, but if you wanted a 30 segmented ring, you could type in 30, hit enter, and it'll change the sides of the circle to have 30 segments. But I want 24, so I'm going to hit 24, enter. I'm going to snap to my circle, and then I'm just going to draw out to where I snap to the edge of my layout line. I'm going to select the center, delete the face. All right, I'm going to select my ring, S to scale, hold down the control key so I can scale it uniformly about the center, and I'm going to just go up here and snap to my other layout line. All right, so there is our overall shape of the speaker. And if you look closely from point to point, those are the segments that make up our oval. So I want this segmented ring to allow most of the speaker to show through, but not this fuzzy part. So I'm going to hit F for the offset tool, and I'm just going to go over here to just before I get to that fuzz, that felt right there. Click. All right. I'm going to delete that center ring. And then I want my ring to be about 3/4 of an inch wide. So I'm going to use the offset tool again. And then I'm going to go over 0.75 for 3/4 of an inch. All right, so now when I cut these out, I want a little extra material to work with. So I'm going to offset another 0.25 inches and then offset on the inside 0.25 inches. So now I have about 1.25 inches piece of material that I need to mill up to cut all my segments. All right, so now I'm going to use the line tool, and I'm just going to go from this point. First, I want to delete these inner rings. All right, and now L for the line tool, and I want to go from center point to center point. Just draw these guys in. All right, and actually I only really need to do the math for a quarter of this ring, because from here to here is the same angles and sizes from here to here, and then which is the same from here to here. So if you divide it into quarters, you only need to do a quarter of that ring. So let's not going to finish that off. Let's just move on here. On my finished piece, I had a little 1/8 of an inch decorative accent wood, so I'm just going to offset these guys by 1/16 of an inch. So offset tool, 1/16, enter. All right, and then I'm going to just grab the line tool here. And draw these guys in. So I'm just picking a spot on the line, and I'm going to where my point is, and then I'm holding the shift key down because that'll lock me onto that axis. So that way I know I'm drawing in the same plane as my original line here. All right, so now to measure the angle, this line here is what's going to reference off my miter gauge. So I'm just going to grab my protractor tool and just measure what that angle is, and that's 86 degrees. So when I set my protractor at, I'm going to do 86 minus 90, so I'm going to set my miter gauge up at 4 degrees. All right, so this one's 4 degrees, so I'm just going to mark that in. So 4, and if you hold down the Alt key, 248, and then release the Alt key, it'll type in the degrees sign. All right, and then I'll just go around. This one is going to be 85.7 degrees. So really, that's really close. I'm just going to round that off to 4 degrees. If they're just a little tiny bit off in the shop when I go to cut them, I'll sand a little bit of the edge to bring it in. All right, and then just work my way around. So this guy right here is 76 degrees. All right, so 78. So 12 degrees. And I'll just keep working my way around till I have all of them drawn in. And then to get my length, that's just a simple bit of measuring. Make sure that I'm pulling parallel off each one of these lines. So let's delete this picture since we don't need it anymore. All right, so there are all our measurements for all the lengths we need to cut each segment, and then these guys are all the degrees that we need to set the miter gauge to in the shop, and then we'll just slide in an 1/8 inch wide piece in between each one. Since these two lines are parallel, you don't have to worry about cutting that accent piece at an angle that will, it's just an 1/8 inch wide slice that goes through there. All right, and then that's basically how I figured out how to make that segmented oval circle. All right, so now when we're out in the shop, we can set a stop at the miter gauge to set the exact length, and then set the angle of the miter gauge to the exact angle. And then I'll leave that stop exactly the same for all 4 cuts, because I need, remember, each quarter is exactly the same, so you're going to need 4 of each segment. And then I'll just reset between each segment that I need. And a little tip that I put that little piece of tape on there, because each time you make a cut at a different angle, you slowly lose that 0 clearance. So by putting a piece of tape there and freshening it up between each cut, I can see exactly where my layout line needs to be, exactly where I'm going to cut each time. Right, and so then when I taped all the pieces together and glued it all up, the oval got a little distorted. I could keep all of them tight, but since there's so many little pieces, I could kind of squish it in and pull it out and deform the oval a little bit. To clean up the inside edge and to cut it to its exact final size, I plotted out that same speaker we used in SketchUp, and put that same oval as my center oval for the CNC machine, and just made sure I found the exact center of the oval and placed it exactly as I could get onto this double stick, taped it down to this black melamine, and then just use a CNC machine to cut it out on the inside groove and the outside shape. So it worked out pretty well.